There is no country in the world without debt. The United States alone owes more than $38 trillion. The European Union's total debt is close to $14 trillion. Japan is approaching $9 trillion. Even oil-rich Saudi Arabia and export powerhouses like Germany and China carry significant debt. So let's ask a simple question. If everyone is in debt, who exactly are they indebted to? Here's the strange part. There isn't a single clear answer. Because the issue isn't as simple as it seems. We usually think of debt as something negative, a mortgage, a credit card balance, a company loan. But today, debt isn't just a burden, it's actually the system itself, the backbone of the global economy. The financial order we live in is built on an invisible thread of debt. Governments borrow, banks lend, investment funds buy bonds, central banks create money. If you follow the chain far enough, you arrive at a surprising conclusion. Countries aren't really indebted to some outsider. In many ways, they're indebted to themselves. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. Today, total global debt exceeds $315 trillion. That's more than 3 times the size of the entire world economy. So how did we get here? Let's go back. It's 1694. England is at war with France. The treasury is empty. The king turns to wealthy merchants and says, "Lend me money now, and I'll pay you interest from future tax revenues." To manage this arrangement, the Bank of England is created. What looked like a small step was actually revolutionary. The state could now spend money it didn't yet have. In return, investors received a document, the government's promise. That's how the modern government bond was born. France adopted the model, the Dutch refined it. After gaining independence, the United States built its own borrowing system. National debt stopped looking like weakness and started looking like strength. We can borrow meant we are trusted. Time passed. Wars changed. Empires fell. But the debt systems kept expanding. Today, the United States owes more than $38 trillion. A large portion of that is owed to American investors, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and of course the Federal Reserve. Foreign countries also hold U.S. Treasury bonds. Japan holds around $1 trillion. China holds roughly $800 billion. But contrary to popular belief, most of America's debt is owed within its own system. It creates a strange loop. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks buy them. The central bank may later buy them back and create money in the process. Citizens pay taxes. Those taxes fund interest payments. That interest flows back into pension funds and financial institutions. The system circulates within itself. And this isn't unique to America, it's global. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S., through international institutions, lends to other countries. Europe lends to developing nations. Developing countries park their foreign exchange reserves in Western government bonds. In a way, everyone is holding someone else's IOU. But there's another important layer, the markets. Who buys government bonds? Pension funds, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, major banks. They decide whether a country is trustworthy. If confidence drops, interest rates rise. If interest rates rise too much, crisis follows. And then there are central banks. They are the most critical players in this system. When they purchase government bonds, they create new money in return. One entity's liability becomes another entity's asset. Much of the money circulating in the economy represents debt somewhere else. There is almost no such thing as debt-free money. For decades, the system has run on confidence. Investors believe this. The principal may never fully disappear, but the interest will be paid. As long as that belief holds, the machine keeps turning. But we've seen what happens when confidence breaks. The Greek debt crisis, Argentina's repeated defaults, Sri Lanka's collapse. When trust evaporates, yields spike, markets freeze, and international institutions step in. Organizations like the International Monetary Fund offer rescue packages, but often in exchange for austerity. And then what happens? The system restarts. Old debt is restructured. New debt is issued. The game continues. Because modern government debt isn't really designed to be fully paid off. It's designed to be rolled over. Governments issue new bonds to pay off old ones. That process is called refinancing. Debt functions almost like a subscription. Interest is the rent paid to keep the system stable. The United States does not plan to erase its debt. Japan has been rolling its debt over for decades. Investors aren't waiting for a day when everything goes to zero. They're waiting for the system to continue. Because government bonds are the foundation of global finance, banks use them as collateral. Pension funds treat them as safe assets. Central banks hold them as reserves. Now think about this. What would happen if a major economy suddenly decided to pay off all its debt? One of the world's safest financial assets would disappear. The money supply would contract. Deflation could begin. Markets would tremble. Here's the paradox. Debt keeps the system alive, but it is also its most fragile point. Politicians sometimes say, "We will eliminate the debt." In reality, the goal isn't to erase it. The goal is to keep it sustainable, to keep trust alive, because this system runs not on numbers, but on belief. There's another reality we can't ignore. Interest payments are not distributed equally. Taxes are collected from broad populations. Interest flows to institutions and investors who hold the bonds. So debt isn't just a transfer between countries, it's also a transfer within societies. That's one reason why global debt and global inequality have grown side by side. In the end, creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't innocent victims. They are parts of the same structure, gears in the same engine. The real question is this: what happens if the engine runs out of fuel? What if new borrowing can no longer support old promises? What if trust breaks? Then the question, who is the creditor, stops being theoretical. It becomes personal. Modern finance has turned debt into money. Governments issue it, banks multiply it, investors trade it, citizens live inside it, both as indirect creditors and as taxpayers funding it. Debt once meant chains. Today it means balance. But remember, every debt is a promise, and no promise can be carried forever. If this perspective made you think, we can go deeper together, because sometimes economics isn't just about numbers. It's about the promises people make to one another.